America. At the turn of the century, peddlers were a common sight in the dusty streets of summer in Carlentini. Occasionally, the peddler was from abroad, usually England, selling stoffa inglese, English fabrics, and bringing news and tales of interest. At someone of a chosen corner of the town's piazza, groups came to view the goods and to listen to the itinerant merchant. Frequently, the townspeople would intersperse announcements and news items of their own. Clusters of people gathered on street corners was not an uncommon sight. And I just imagine them yelling all these things out to each other in Italian, you know? Hey, swoop-ba-doo-ba, da-da-da, here's the announcement. On one of these afternoons, a large crowd had gathered in front of the local bar on the piazza, which served as the Carlentini-Catania stagecoach stop. Because remember, Catania is 15 miles from Carlentini, and it's the second largest city in Sicily. Some kind of bargain or another, they thought, but there were no goods on display. As people approached and craned to get a peek, they were surprised to see that one of the more venturesome local citizens had returned home. Sebastiano Salerno had returned from America. From the moment he stepped down from the dusty 3 o'clock horse carriage from Catania, word spread like wildfire. His family, friends, and neighbors came running to greet him and to welcome him back home. They wanted to see what he looked like after several years in America. They wanted to hear about the fascinating land of opportunity. Was money really found on the streets, in quotations, as they had heard? What was it like to live prosperously in a strange land? What were his impressions? Would he recommend America to them? Was there a chance for them? Sebastiano's appearance made it all seem so real. He wore an expensive brown and white pinstriped double-breasted suit, a tan vest with a gold watch chain and a fob, a Borsellino hat to match the color of the suit, spats to match the color of the vest, and a gold ring with a bright red stone. So you would love that outfit, Mom, wouldn't you? Is that your taste?
My kind of guy.
Yeah? Are you into stuff like that?
So, totally.
Are you being sarcastic?
Yes.
The American cigar that he was smoking was of particular interest to them. Some had never seen one. Giuseppe Joseph Salerno. Joseph in quotations. Giuseppe is the Italian version of the name. His brother had been recruited for work with the Union Pacific Railroad in Omaha, Nebraska in 1985. Being a cobbler by trade, shortly after he arrived, he opened a shoe repair shop at 6th and Pierce Streets. In 1987, he sent for Sebastiano, who also opened a shoe repair shop, and later a small clothing store between 10th and Jackson and Howard Streets. During this time, Joseph added a grocery store to his own shoe shop. They were very enterprising, to say the least. But I love it, too, because that is enterprising to have a shoe shop and then a grocery store. Especially, you're a business owner and all that. But it is funny because it's like, here comes big, fancy Sebastiano Salerno with his gold watch and his suit. And it's funny because it's like, it shows you how poor they were and how much of peasants they were, because he had a shoe repair shop. He was probably not that wealthy. You know what I mean? By, the real standards, in America, he was probably looked at as just some Guido, just some wop guy, you know what I mean? And not he wasn't the big shot in America, but he did well enough in America to come back to Sicily and impress everybody and do all that. So I commend him for that. But I just think it's funny, that everyone was like, ooh, look at Sebastiano, and he's not Jeff Bezos or anything. He had a shoe repair shop. Because Sebastiano had prospered in his business in 1904, by the way, sorry to interrupt myself again, but there's articles written about him. I just read one on Google. He's a famous figure, I guess, because he's the first Sicilian immigrant that went, him and his brother are the first ones that went to Carlentini, Sicily, and then everyone came after them, and it blew up into a whole little Italy, so he's a pioneer of a movement. Because Sebastiano had prospered in his business in 1904, he received an appointment as a steamship company agent, and as a result, he had returned to Carlentini to encourage others to emigrate. Although he was primarily interested in booking passages, he offered employment to all able-bodied men willing to leave home to work in America. He would defer payment of all travel expenses until after the volunteer would be employed and earning a salary. Housing and food also would be provided on a deferred payment basis. The Salerno brothers had established a group of boarding houses in the vicinity of 6th and Pierce Streets for housing those that agreed to return with him. Sebastiano would screen each applicant for willingness to work and reliability. Since Carlentini was a small town of approximately 20,000, and since he had been born and raised there, the appraisal would be a simple formality. He knew that the people of Carlentini were work-oriented. He also knew that the thought of hard work in America would be of no deterrent. Now that the news of going to America had become a reality, the enthusiasm with which Sebastiano had been greeted upon his arrival became a very subdued murmur of concern and second thoughts. The thought of leaving home became an awesome concern. The news of Sebastiano's return had spread throughout Carlentini. Rumors indicated that he would be returning to America after a short stay, and that probably he would be taking some of the townspeople with him. Everyone wished for an opportunity to see him, confirm the rumors, and learn a little more about the event that was boggling the minds of many of them. A reception was planned for the first Sunday afternoon after his arrival. It was scheduled for 1 o'clock in front of Don Ciccio's home, which was on the shady side of the street, close to the Cancellata, an iron railing which marked the western end of Via Mazzini. Opposite the street side of the railing was a giardino orchard with approximately 10 acres of orange, lemon, and lime trees planted on a sharp descending slope and emanating a very fine perfume-like fragrance. Each day, as the afternoon wore on, a sea breeze would wind its way up the slope, cooling that section of town. Interspersed among the trees were patches of wildflowers of all colors. It was totally an ideal location for celebrating. Don Ciccio had recently purchased a Victrola, a primitive hand-wound record player, and a number of 78 RPM records, which included waltzes, polkas, and mazurkas for listening and dancing. His collection also included recordings of Nofrio La Fardazza, a very popular comic monologist of the time. The music and monologues were to provide an extra added attraction. Some of the ladies had volunteered to bake a variety of, I wish I knew how to pronounce Italian words. Can you do this word for me? I don't want to do it wrong. Pastiche, how do you say that? It's pastry.
Pasticcio.
Pasticcio. The community miller had volunteered the flour and the baker his oven. This was to be the social event of the year. Shortly after Sunday dinner, those interested in hearing what Sebastiano had to say, particularly referenced the possibility of going to America, started wending their way to Don Ciccio's home, most bringing their own chairs with them, for they knew that it would be impossible for him to provide seating for everyone. Don Ciccio had placed the Victrola on the table in front of his door, and as people arrived, they placed their chairs as closely in front of or around the record player. Sebastiano had a special place reserved for him toward the front and where he could be reached. This was a typical Sicilian get-together. There was music and it was lively. Some had brought a bottle of their best homemade wine or olives. Others brought ceci, roasted garbanzo beans, or do you know how to say that? It means roasted garbanzo beans. Ceci. Ceci. Or lupine, a flat, Lupini, a flat, salted yellow bean which went well with drinking wine. Again, it was a typical Sicilian party. Everybody talked, no one listened, but a great time was had by all. On the serious side, Sebastiano was bombarded with questions which he anticipated and for which he had ready answers. For some, it didn't take much convincing for an oral commitment to volunteer to go to America. Because although the possibility of going to America was merely a rumor, many had given that possibility a great deal of thought. At best, it was primarily a risk, even for the young. It wouldn't be easy leaving for a strange land at that prime of life, leaving all of your loves for a country where, for all practical purposes, you would be as though deaf and mute. They wouldn't understand English, nor could they speak it. On that particular Sunday, Don Giuseppe Sorrentino, nicknamed Usu Pepe Acoca for no apparent reason, was taking his usual afternoon walk on the piazza. He observed the large number, I think his nickname was for no apparent reason. I don't know how he got the nickname, but he was taking his usual afternoon walk on the piazza. He observed the large number of people headed down via Mazzini toward the Cancellata. From friends, he learned of the party and the reason for the party. Immediately, he thought of his son, Antonino Sorrentino, better known as Nino. Perhaps this was something he would be of his interest. So that's your great-grandfather, that's my great-great-grandfather, is Don Giuseppe Sorrentino. And he sees this get-together and thinks of his son. So that's how we all ended up here, is he saw Sebastiano Salerno's get-together about America. Nino had been idle and restless. He worked on occasions applying skills that he had learned as a blacksmith. Because he did not like blacksmithing, what a fateful moment, huh? He did not work as such, but he did mechanical work, applying those skills in repairing agricultural equipment and irrigating systems. The occasional work was not sufficient. The lack of work was stressful and depressing to him. Don Giuseppe cut his walk short and headed for home, where he informed his son of the possibility of finding work in America. Nino was a likely candidate. He had industrial skills and he was somewhat desperate for work. All the sacrifices he would have to make could all be worth it. So that's chapter 3, which is News of America. What do you think of all that?
Interesting.
A typical Sicilian get-together. Everybody talked, nobody listened. You remember those beans?
Yeah, well, I was looking for them for our Christmas, but I couldn't find any.
Really?
Everywhere for lupini beans.
I think I've had them before.
Yeah, you squeeze them and they pop out of the skin.
Oh, yeah, and they're yummy.
Really salty and
Yes, I've had them.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people must have had those.
No, probably not.
Huh.
They're so Sicilian.
Really?
Yeah, you've had them because I found them sometimes
Yeah.
to serve,
Mm-hmm.
just in honor of my family, my tradition. We always had lupini beans.
Mm.
And then those are the wet ones. Then there were the ones that were dry and hard. I can't remember the names of those.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was looking for lupini beans.
Yeah, so what do you think about that chapter?
It's interesting. It's kind of sad.
Why?
Well, they were so desperate that they would go to a different country where they didn't know the language or anything.
Yeah.
Someplace not as pretty at all. But
Yeah,
it
Omaha.
reminds me
Yeah.
of people that come from like the Dominican Republic or that come from.
Can you speak a little bit louder or come closer?
It reminds me of people that come from the Dominican Republic and people that come from Puerto Rico, because the same thing, those are beautiful places. But they come for the same reason.
Mm-hmm.
They leave the beach and their home country to find jobs and be more prosperous.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I was
And
thinking,
I met those people here.
yeah, there is a commonality in every immigrant story, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Look at Mexico. Mexico's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I mean, along the
It
coast.
is.
Oh my God. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mexico's a beautiful country.
Right.
It's just poverty-stricken.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking of like Nannu and writing this and what he must have thought about his family knowing that they were making such a transition from one country to another, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like the concept of like, well, here goes, let's just see how this goes. And like not knowing what the future culture of your descendants would be. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Like I picture that for him. Was that something that he was concerned about?
Yeah, of course.
Because I saw how he said like Mario's name was Italian and
They
none of
never
ours
even
were.
seen it.
And was he anticipating and knowing like these kids are gonna know nothing about like where we're from or like what language we spoke or whatever?
I don't know if he was anticipating that, but I think about, I would love to move to Australia or New Zealand. I really did think about it before I had kids.
Mm-hmm.
Because the same idea, I thought, these are better countries to live in, and I'd rather raise my children here.
Mm-hmm. Huh? Just because
And
they're
now
better countries.
I really wish I had.
Right, and but losing your American culture is not much because it's not like the Sicilians where it's your roots for like generations and generations going back as long as you can remember.
Well, it would have been as long as I could remember.
What, America?
Yes.
Yeah, but that's just one generation.
Yeah.
This is already a new place for us, so you see what I'm saying?
Yes, but for me it would have been different, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been as different as Sicily to America.
No, yeah, that's my point, in
They
the sense
speak
that they were there for
English. I wouldn't-
generations. Being Sicilian was all we had. Being American is all we have now, but it's new to us, is what I'm saying.
But I think moving to a country that speaks a different language is huge.
That too, yeah. Definitely.
That's huge. I still can't imagine doing that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine moving back to Italy because of that.
And that's what's beautiful about America too, though, is that you can come from another country that speaks another language, and there's definitely a period of time where you're adapting, you're adjusting or whatever, but at some point you become American and you just blend into the fabric. And now, like for instance, Italian Americans, Sicilians Americans, you can't even imagine America without us, you know?
Yeah, but for a long time they were discriminated against too. We
Right.
still have a little discrimination. I pick it up sometimes.
Yeah, sure, definitely, but it didn't take too long for us to kind of blend into the fabric of what is America.
It took a generation.
Right.
I mean, they were called wops and dagos, and it wasn't easy at first.
Right, definitely, and we'll get into that as the manuscript goes on, but the point that I'm trying to illustrate is the fact that, like, if you go to Japan, for instance, if we were to move to Japan, they might grow to love us or accept us as for who we are, but we'll never be Japanese, We'll always just be some other people in Japan, I think, to some degree. Who knows? We'd have to do it to find out. You never know until you do it.
Yeah.
But America has that feeling and that reputation as a land of immigrants where all different types of people can come here and make their mark. And you say, oh, yeah, it was hard and we're discriminated against, of course, and we'll get into that more for sure and everything, and it is the case for sure. And at the time, it was the most intense when it was brand new, is the point I'm trying to make too, is that I think that the whole world has come along a long way in terms of like discrimination and all that stuff, meaning it's not as acceptable in today's world to discriminate against anybody. But back then, yeah, it's just like, it's interesting to think about, like I said, we seem to have blended into the fabric of the nation. But back then, it was like Sicilians were brand new. So it's just interesting how fast that happened. How like Italian Americans are a staple of American culture now. Pizza, pasta, all these things. The movies about The Godfather and all these things, they're like very iconic elements of American culture because we've came here to stay. We never left. You know what I mean? Like I'm half Sicilian. I don't know. I don't speak Sicilian.
But
I don't. You know what I mean? I don't do all this stuff. I'm
the other thing
Americanized,
is you're half.
right? But like, true. But either way, being born and raised, and even the same goes for you. Even though I'm one generation deeper in all of it, more American